Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. We are tracking a series of storm complexes that look to be non-stop going into February along into the south and southeast corridors. But even those areas along the west coast with an atmospheric river in full effect and a traverse of complexes out there in the Pacific Ocean that will be moving inland going into the end of January, heading into that first part of February. So I appreciate all my subscribers out there. This channel is up to 236,000 subscribers. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm here on a daily basis putting out a lot of content, so follow along if you are new to the channel throughout 2024 to keep you well ahead of the storm. So let's take a look at where we've been, because these areas are already saturated along the west coast. We've already seen a series of storm complexes just in the last 7 days pummel the Pacific Northwest, as well as Northern California and much of California and even much of the western regions. And that traversed across. And then there was a second piece of energy that swung up through the south and into the southeast, leaving all those flooding rains. In fact, that we had some even flood emergencies into portions of Louisiana and even upwards to 10 inches down there into southeastern portions of Texas. And we've got a lot more on the table, folks. We've got a steady stream of moisture supply funneling in from that Caribbean. We've got the water vapor transport index just pummeling the same areas today. And then you can see another disturbance going to be trailing on the backside going into the day evening on Friday. But then we have these series of storm complexes that'll just waiting to impact the west coast. And that looks to be the real deal as we head into the end of January, going into that first part of February. So going forward, here's the setup for today. We've got another rainy day across a good part of the southeast. Those areas across New Orleans, into Jackson, back into Mobile, into Montgomery, into the Birmingham region, all the way up into Atlanta, even into Knoxville. Those areas are under the gun today for yet another 1 to 3 inches of rain potentially. Those areas highlighted in green could pick up anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of rain. So these are already saturated grounds. We've got numerous flood watches in place. So do expect definitely more rain on the table. And again, we've got another complex. So this is January, folks. It's not expected to get this much rain. It's not like we're in the middle of spring or April or May or anything like that. This is January, one of the driest months. So yeah, so whenever you see these, percentage of values, these water content values upwards to 2, 3, even upwards to almost 400% at times, you definitely can tell that atmosphere is soaked as the El Nino is starting to show its true colors and impacting a good part of the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. and then well as the west coast with those series of atmospheric river complexes that will be pummeling the west coast. So, and that's evident as far as the dense fog advisories. In fact, one point last night, there were over 1,300 counties, almost an all-time record, as many counties that were issued under a fog advisories, literally extending from the deep south of Texas going all the way up into Canada. That tells you right there the atmosphere is completely saturated. It's got the mist, it's got the fog, and it doesn't take much lift. That's why the water content values are at that 99 percentile for this time of year. So once you get that lift mechanism and once it gets going, it doesn't take much to squeeze out all that atmosphere that's available and just dump it on the surface. And that's why we've seen inundated flood watches and flood warnings. And I do feel that will be continuing over the next couple of days and then even into Saturday time frame. But that storm complex that comes across Texas through Louisiana into Arkansas, eventually once it swings over into the southeast, those could get a little bumpy. So we do have an upgraded risk for a slight risk for severe weather. We're talking some larger hail associated with this one, some 60 to 65 mile per hour wind, and I definitely can't rule out an isolated tornado or two within this corridor from Mobile all the way up to Montgomery, extending into the Atlanta region. So just be on high alert for those areas that not only do you get the heavy rain, but some of those could include some of that larger hail and those isolated spin up tornado, at least 1 or 2 potentially, within this sector going into that daytime on Saturday. But yeah, if you add up the totals of what you've seen so far, and this is the next 72 hours with the disturbance you're getting now, and that other one that comes in through Friday, glances North Texas into Oklahoma, but once it taps into that Gulf moisture again, that transport of energy coming in out of the Caribbean, right? It don't take much to squeeze out and wring out another 2 to 4 inches of heavy rain. And yes, some of those areas in yellow definitely could pick up even some 4 to 6 inch totals. This is just over that 3 days. So that just extends all the way up into the Ohio Valley, going into the mid-Atlantic, and going into those portions of the Northeast with lighter amounts. But you can see the beginning stages of that atmospheric river still impacting the Pacific Northwest. And this will be shifting southbound as we go into that February timeframe, but not before. We got record heat to talk about. We have seen a dramatic flip. I was looking at some of the data. Portions of Montana hit 54 below zero on January 13th. Now, literally 2 weeks later, we're talking about record high temperatures of nearly 60 degrees up there. That's a crazy turnaround and a dramatic 110 degree swing in temperatures as that Arctic vortex plunged all the way to the deep south, and now it's just retreating back up into the Arctic and replacing it with all that warmer air anomalies, especially for those northern tier states and even off the West Coast. Storms love warm weather. So that's why we're getting even record high temperatures along the West Coast into Oregon. Remember Portland was dealing with an ice storm. Now they're dealing with some, highs in this low to mid 60s, right? So that is just a dramatic turnaround of what we're going to see. But look at the Pacific, look it up here in the Northeast. You actually do see some cooler anomalies. There's going to be a little piece of energy that is going to swing into New England. At the same time, we do have a low pressure center that will be traversing off the East Coast by then, the same one that left all the rain for the Southeast going into that Monday morning time frame. So it could be close enough, and there could be at least colder air around, to wring out some snow showers across this region. Some of the latest data could pick up 1 to possibly 3 inches in some of these areas heading into that Monday morning time frame. That was the European. This is the GFS. So even right now, this is about 5 days out. So it's not like it's that long range. We've got both global models kind of hinting with that low pressure center off the coast, with colder air coming in from the north side. Some of that could be in the form of snow heading into that Sunday night, going into that Monday morning time frame. If we look at the blend of the models right now and some of the preliminary estimates as far as the snowfall totals, about 1 to 3 inches through Pennsylvania. Some of these areas in blue, not out of the question to pick up those 2 to 3 inch totals, but nothing significant. But now it's not a blowtorch everywhere. You're still going to get at least some snow out of this deal headed into that Monday morning time frame. So let's look at the big picture going into the end of the month. So we've got the active subtropical jet. It's a little bit cooler down further to the south just because of all the rainfall and all the clouds around. But there's that ridge building up there in the northern states, especially into southern Canada. But look where all the cold air is. It technically didn't really go far. It's not like it's lost in its ethers and its winter's not coming back. It's just setting up. It's hanging out there in Alaska with dangerously cold temperatures up there, 40, 50. Some of those areas haven't seen 40 below in nearly 2 years. That's kind of rare for them up there. But yes, that colder will continue to deepen, and I think we max out sometime in that 29th or 30th time frame, with some of those areas going to 50 plus below zero. And then all eyes will turn out there into the Pacific Ocean, because we've got an active Pacific jet. This thing is going to be screaming up there at 200 knots, right? That's going to pull in a lot of that Pacific moisture and pull it inland. But eventually this will be strong enough, and these low pressure centers will be strong enough to kind of start to pull some of that colder air into our western regions. But here's the drought monitor index. It's not like California needs any rain. The entire state doesn't even have a drought right now. Well, we do see some needed benefits is across the Southwest. This is the newest update this morning. This actually goes into effect on Tuesday, but you can't see it till Thursday. So some of these areas into the Southeast will it actually is even better than that because this doesn't include the last 2 days. But definitely by the time we go into next Thursday, this new drought monitor map is going to be looking a lot different, especially for those areas across the southeast with all the rain still to come. So, but let's take you through the setup as we go towards the end of the month. So we've got another dynamic system, right? A 969 low pressure center. Look at those tight isobars. This one's going to have a lot of wind. This one is going to be strong enough to the initial stages of start pulling. It's like a tug of war. It's going to start pulling and dragging down some of that Arctic air as we see some of that the ridge start to slowly retreat back up into Canada. It's going to be a slow process in the beginning. So we're going to be looking at a lot of rain going into that first couple of days of February with those systems impacting the West Coast. And eventually those will be swinging across into the Four Corners regions. Notice there's technically not that much colder air, right? It's still the second, it's still warmer than anomalies, but it's going to be cold enough around that cold core. We're going to start to see some of that precipitation start transferring into snow once we get into that third and fourth time frame down there into New Mexico, likely probably into West Texas by then potentially, as that colder air will start to funnel in and very heavy rain will start setting up shop with all that deep water content from that atmospheric river will be swinging across and looks to set up there in Texas again with another heavy rain setup. And look how low the jet stream is. That's a 997 millibar below into Mexico. That's pretty significant, especially once we get that second system. So they're lined up. So you got one right here. This is around February 4th time frame. Look how low the low pressure is. The ridge starts to retreat slowly start to retreat back up into Canada. Now we're not talking cold again. I mean, we're not talking cold. We're talking warm conditions starting to filter back into Alaska. But it's this one right here hanging off the coast around the 4th and 5th time frame. I think this is the one that's going to have more impact, and drag will be the final culprit and start to drag down some of that colder air. It doesn't look to be, say, Arctic in nature, not as intense as the one we just came out of, but it does look to be more of a Canadian air mass. And that's crucial because a lot of times Arctic air is the driest air. So this air mass that's coming, although it will be cold, I don't see it being the Arctic in nature. Therefore, the abundance amount of precipitation is going to be high with this particular setup. At the same time, the jet stream is going to dip further south, which is typically what you would see in the month of February as you get it further and further south going into the deeper part of winter. So you see the precipitation anomalies plunge all the way down into Southern California, through the desert Southwest, all the way into Texas, all the way into the deep south, and much of the central based areas have well above average precipitation anomalies. At the same time, we see the overall temperatures start to retreat. So the ridge, that first week of February, starts to retreat, slowly starts to retreat. As the ridge will start to get replaced up there in Canada, it will start bleeding some of that colder air anomalies into the western regions. And this map is actually likely going to be shifted even further off to the east as we get deeper into the time frame, because global models have a hard time picking up the true density of colder air masses in the extended range. So I would guesstimate this colder air would actually be extended further off into the east than what it's actually showing right now. And if we take it a step further, once you get into that second week, remember that's that second push of energy that's hanging off the west coast, that's going to be the one that'll be the final straw and pull all the colder air, the Canadian air mass, down into the lower 48. So now you got extended blue showing up on the map with well below average temperature anomalies for the lower 48 corridor going into that second week of February, that Valentine's week there, as the ridge will start to retreat well back up into Canada by then. And then Alaska turns really warm. Therefore, much of the lower 48 will turn pretty cold. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely hit the subscribe button and catch my next update where I protect you before and after storm.